Scrapyards played a massive part in railway preservation. While they meant the end of the line for many locomotives, the ability for rail enthusiasts to purchase spare parts or entire near-functioning engines for scrap value allowed many locomotives to be spared the cutter's torch and given a second chance at life. Some scrap dealers like Woodham went out of their way to help save engines, while most just got on with the job. But there was one scrapyard that, while not intentional, played a massive part in preserving British Rail's diesels. By the late 1970s, the diesel engines introduced by British Rail's modernisation plan were themselves starting to become obsolete, either due to technical issues or simply being replaced by more powerful machines. Like with their old steam locomotives, British Rail initially started cutting up the diesels themselves, but eventually ended up with too great a backlog and started contracting private scrapyards to do the cutting up for them. One of these scrapyards belonged to Vic Berry in Leicester, the site formerly being the Braunston Gate goods yard. For years, Berry specialised in buying and breaking up old carriages and goods wagons, but eventually started taking on diesels from Swindon in 1983, and later multiple unit diesels and some stock from the London Underground. Unlike Woodham's, Berry held no qualms when it came to cutting up engines, and wasted little time scrapping the stock they got their hands on, these primarily being Class 25 and 27 diesels. So great was the amount of engines Berry cut up that they ran out of space in the yard to keep them. As a result, engines would be brought in and have their bogies, fuel tanks, battery boxes and other major components removed before being piled on top of each other, resulting in the iconic stacks that many enthusiasts came to know. As dire as all this scrapping sounds, there was a silver lining to the diesels ending up in the hands of Vic Berry: asbestos. As well as scrap, Berry also specialised in asbestos removal, often stripping rolling stock of asbestos first before cutting it up. This made the yard a goldmine for preservationists, as not only were there hundreds of diesels available for scrap value, but most would have already been stripped of asbestos while waiting to be cut up, something that would have cost potential buyers a significant amount of time and money to remove themselves. As such, Vic Berry became the go-to place for diesel preservationists. Out of the hundreds of diesels that ended up in the yard, 18 were preserved. 1 Class 24, 1 Class 26, 1 Class 40, 2 27s, 12 25s and the Class 3 shunter that worked around the yard. A mere drop in the bucket compared to Woodham, but compared to most other scrapyards at the time, this was an impressive amount to have been saved, especially given the rate at which they were cut up. And it wasn't just the engines in their yard that Berry helped preserve, but numerous others purchased from various scrapyards or from British Rail directly that needed to be cleared of asbestos. If you ever get the chance to see a preserved diesel in operation, there's a good chance that at some point they would have visited Berry's yard. By 1990, 7 years after the first diesel rolled into the yard, Vic Berry scrapped their last engine and began to focus on breaking up diesel multiple units and rolling stock again while still handling asbestos removal on the side. This, however, didn't last long, as in March 1991, a fire broke out at the yard, spreading asbestos across Leicester. Berry was already in the process of relocating, but the fire and a breakdown in negotiations with British Rail on top of the asbestos issue led to the site being closed down by the end of June that year. While hardly a bastion for preservation like Barry Island, Vic Berry's scrapyard did prove to be a key player in saving diesel engines from the cutter's torch, especially Class 25s. Whether you'd call it famous or infamous, I suppose is your choice, but if it wasn't for this one scrap dealer who happened to deal with asbestos, we may not have had the chance to preserve some of British Rail's early diesels. Talk about a silver lining. Just make sure not to breathe in any of it. Subscribe for more.